Now on this episode of Size, love is in the air, and we talk about the royal wedding. But do millennials really care about the monarchy?
I'm kind of amped to see that this family is maybe being a little bit more open to inviting other cultures and other people within their community.
Would you travel abroad and volunteer just for the Instagram likes?
Rather than actually caring about the impact of your actions, you care about the perception of the impact.
And would you follow your parents' footsteps in your career?
Would you be a bad parent if you didn't try to use this nepotism in their favor?
Teddy, what do your parents do?
I mean, it doesn't really matter. I'm gonna travel abroad, volunteer, get a couple Instagram likes.
Can you bring me with you?
Hey y'all, you guys ready for tonight?
Hi, yeah.
Okay. So we got a ton of things to talk about. So we're gonna start off with Harry and Meghan, and then volunteering abroad, married names, and pursuing parents' jobs. But first we're gonna do our okay, no ways. So our okays are the things that we were feeling this week, and our no ways were the things we were not having. So I'm gonna go first because my okay was way cool. So we all had the really awesome opportunity to meet Michelle Obama this week. Okay, so we all found this out last week, and so I was like so mind blown because like Michelle, I'm gonna cry. Michelle Obama is literally like one of my largest idols. We got to see her speak at an Economic Club of Canada event. She spoke on women's issues, generally life type of things. That lovely blonde lady in the picture there is one of our producers who made sure we weren't doing bad things. But overall, I'm still mind blown. It was super awesome to meet Michelle Obama.
She called me baby when I left. She gave me actually bye baby, and I was like, I like melted. I was like, amazing. Yeah.
You can't beat that.
No.
So my no way of the week is having to make reservations to go see Santa Claus. So Macy's in New York has their Santa Land, and you can go visit Santa Claus there, but you have to make reservations now. Like, you can't just walk up and do that. And I'm like not about this, because I think meeting Santa Santa's not a man you need to make a meeting with. Like, you meet him and you're there for the joy of the season. So this technology, I'm not about it. Teddy?
Okay, so my okay is the generosity of Sacha Baron Cohen. He was the guy who played Borat. Basically, here's him in the lovely, tasteful mankini. So a bunch of his fans went to Kazakhstan and actually did the same thing, wore it, and they got in trouble for indecent exposure. They all got major fines posted about it, and Sacha Baron Cohen said, you know what, just DM me, I'll pay for your fines. And he paid for their fines, and I think it's great because that should not be covered up, and I don't think any place should ban it. I think as many guys as possible should wear the mankini, embrace it. My no way is basically a company in Japan allegedly is paying like a $60 stipend to people who marry their waifus, which are imaginary cartoon wives from Japanese cartoons, and I think it's a no way because they're only allowed to marry one. You know, if you're gonna have your fantasy, I wanna marry the whole damn cast, okay? This is unfair.
It's very like kawaii, you know what I mean? No, I'm there for it. So my okay of the week. So as everyone has noticed, it's starting to get a little bit colder outside, and it's a really important time to be mindful and thoughtful of like street-based population. So as it gets colder, this is a time to be a little bit more generous. If you got a couple extra bucks, give them to people that need them. If you have some sweaters, if you have hats, if you can buy someone a hot coffee, like this is the time to do it. And what inspired my okay of the week is because in UK right now, there's a charity called Action Hunger that set up these like vending machines as a pilot project where street-based populations could access things like food and like toothpaste and books and warm clothes as the winter sort of approaches. And then my no way of the week is the New York Times this week wrote an article that, you know, about a Nazi sympathizer. And reading the article, it is my opinion that it heavily humanizes and normalizes sort of like Nazi ideology. And lots of people agree with me. It's faced like tons and tons of criticism and backlash. And it disappoints me that a platform would, you know, in my opinion, normalize something like this. And it disappoints me that a platform wouldn't instead use this as a way to like call out the violent nature of being a Nazi. You know, it was like a day in the life of a Nazi. It was so bizarre. So yeah, those were my
So my okay for this week is Erykah Badu at the 2017 Soul Train Awards. So she started off with a performance and then ended off taking a knee in support of Colin Kaepernick and his protest towards social justice issues. I think it's important, especially how the media is dying down with like, oh, taking a knee. I think it's important to keep the conversation going and keep fighting for the issues that matter to us and our communities. My no way for this week is the media not leaving Malia Obama alone. The media has been showing like her videos of her blowing smoke rings, and I just think like she should be allowed to, you know, live her life as a young person, especially because this is not something that she asked for, the attention and the media to always have her eyes on her, and I think that she should be allowed to live her life.
Alrighty, you guys ready to check out our debate?
Let's do it.
Alrighty.
Harry's getting hitched, and his fiancée isn't your average princess. Prince Harry is engaged to Meghan Markle. The engagement is a big deal, in part because Markle is a biracial American actress who has been married before. That's prompted some to suggest that the royals are getting a bit more relatable. Royalists argue that the British monarchy provides stability and rises above politics, and that the younger royals in particular are doing important charitable work. But others argue the monarchy is elitist and out of touch, and that the only place the royals belong is in the history books. What's your reaction to Harry and Meghan's engagement? Do you think the royals are relevant today?
You know what? I think it's pretty unfair that people are calling them irrelevant, considering that they should be something that we embrace as part of our culture as Canadians. And I'm saying this because I think the royal family can be fun. It's something cool to fawn over, especially considering the more toxic celebrity culture that we have perhaps south of the border. However, a point I do want to make is I don't know if an American should be able to marry to this family and taint their blood with the disloyalty that we saw way back, because us Canadians deserve to have the chance instead. Last time I checked, we were the ones who had the fealty, we were the ones who had the royalty, and we were the ones who didn't throw the tea into the freaking ocean, okay? That's my issue.
For the record, I'm pretty sure there is a Canadian married to one of the more minor royals, just to put that out there.
Minor royals, wow.
Wow.
Well, not the big one. But Teddy, to move on your point there, I don't know necessarily if we should honor them as our history, because personally, in my opinion, the monarchy is kind of obsolete. But what I do think is I do think the royals still hold a ton of power, not only in political power, because they are still running in those circles, but also like celebrity power. So I'm kind of amped to see that this family is maybe being a little bit more open to inviting other cultures and other people within their community, because Meghan Markle is half African American, which is like a first for that family. So let's get some spice all up in Kensington Palace out there. I'm ready for it.
I think that, like, honestly, I feel like the royals are so irrelevant. Like, I'm sorry, but it doesn't matter. Like, why does it matter if he's dating someone outside of royalty? Like, the whole concept of like kings and queens, all that stuff is like I was saying, like, it was the textbook stuff. Like, that stuff I'd read about as a kid in fairy tales. Like, I don't really care. Like, those are just people at the end of the day who are born into a rich family or a wealthy family. I think it's just so irrelevant.
Michael, do you have like your own version of royalty? Like, oh, they're my royalty.
Yes, Beyonce.
I knew that was gonna come up. I was thinking the same thing.
Someone actually tweeted at us, they said, #MySide. I don't feel that the royal family are trying to be more relatable. I feel that's happening naturally as our society becomes more diverse. Why there always a stereotype for princesses? Anyways, this was from Carmen. I was wondering, do you sort of have an opinion on how princesses have changed in like our perception of them as a royal family now? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, that's like really interesting. I've given very little thought. I mean, of course I'm like against the monarchy. Like, of course I'm against the monarchy. Of course I'm against anything that's like inheriting massive amounts of wealth. So I'm like, I'm not into it. But like princesses, there's the stereotype they hold. I mean, even when the word princess to me is like so Disney, like that's not even a real legit thing. Right now I'm like, Mulan's cool, but like, yeah, no, this is also
But do you think that someone could come out with like a Princess Markle movie or Princess Meghan movie based off Meghan? I'd watch that movie.
Why would you?
What? No, I think they can have a good fairy tale.
They have one. It's called,
about
like,
what?
The TV series she was on.
Oh my god.
I think royals, they shouldn't be too focused on, they shouldn't be too important because they don't have any power like our heads of government. They're just there for ceremonial purposes and just to continue their tradition of life.
I think that the royals don't just belong in history books, they're human too. They're just like us. Even if they're a prince or princess, they shouldn't be treated differently because we're all the same.
So I'd just like to first thank you so much for sitting down and having a little chat with me.
It is I who thanks you.
Well, lots to talk about. So the first thing I wanted to discuss a little bit is, right now, empowerment of youth and empowerment of women is so big. How important do you think it is to have a platform for youth and a platform for young women especially to share their voices and their stories?
Well, it's a great question because giving a platform to youth, I think youth is leading today. Young people are not leading tomorrow. It's now that it's happening. And to give them a platform is essential not only for them to bring up their voices and raise their voices, but for us to listen. As people, as governments, as families, as parents, as friends, we need to listen about youth's concerns, where they want to go, what are they dreaming about, and how we can make that happen with them, for them, because they'll be raising the next generation of our boys and girls, and there's so much more work to be done.
Talking about equality and awareness, one thing I want to ask you is how do you think that the average Canadian can bring equality into their daily life?
The average Canadian can bring equality in their daily life with baby steps, with small change. And I see it happen everywhere. The little actions that human beings, take in their daily lives can make a huge difference in the long run. So I encourage everybody to take those baby steps to get either engaged in your community or in your school, or even to change the level of language that you have towards yourself, more compassion, more love, more openness, more patience, and towards others. Just that creates a micro change that can lead to huge change.
What is your favorite part about being a Canadian?
My favorite part about being a Canadian, well, there's multiple parts. The great outdoors, because I'm super sporty and active, but I would say that it's having the deep knowledge that we live in a country where everything is possible and where we need to be responsible for one another, and we can do that. So that we can lift people up and never leave anybody behind, but it takes patience, it takes hard work, and it takes great intention.
So what is one thing now that you've learned that you would tell your teenage self?
Wow, the things I would tell my teenage self that I know now, so many things. My body is a temple. I need to know it, respect it, love it, and be at peace with it, as it will carry me through life, through adversity, through forests, through hardship, through mountains, literally and metaphorically, and also to be patient with myself, to not be afraid to explore. Who am I? Why do I react this way? I would also bring attention to what I pay attention to. What do I pay attention to in my daily life? Because we become what we pay attention to. What do I give my energy to, and who do I give my energy to, and why? And what feels right is probably right. What feels wrong is probably wrong. Listen to your intuition.
You know what? I think that's really great advice. I'm actually going to take that advice.
I hope you do.
Thank you.
If you're volunteering abroad, slow down on the selfies. That's the message behind a campaign created by the Norwegian Students and Academics International Assistance Fund. The campaign video features someone who wants more likes on social media. So she goes to Africa to work with kids, and she snaps a lot of selfies while she's there. Those behind the campaign argue that those selfies promote harmful stereotypes, so they've created a social media checklist for volunteers. Some see volunteering abroad as a way to give back and gain experience, but others see it as exploitative and selfish, something that promotes dependency over sustainability and is sometimes done just to strengthen a resume. What do you think about volunteering abroad? Is it positive or problematic?
So I think that voluntourism is very, very harmful. I think that when you look at studies and you look at research, you see that when groups of tourists go to communities as like volunteer trips, they take jobs away from those community members, and it ultimately really economically hurts these communities. There's also lots of research that shows around like the children in these communities having trauma because so many visitors go there and impact them and then leave right away. I think that it's a form of neocolonialism. I think that it's really, really harmful. And I also think that it perpetuates in a lot of cases this like white savior narrative where rather than actually caring about the impact of your actions, you care about the perception of the impact. So, and I think that this is really common among white people especially, where white people they care more about looking like they're doing good than doing good. I'm very, very against it.
Okay, I want to hop in here with a question. Do you think you can ever go abroad and do a sort of volunteer trip that actually benefits the community? Because you seem very, very against it. Is there any way you can go and do that like successfully and actually help those communities?
I will say, quite honestly, like I don't have the knowledge, I don't have enough knowledge to know how you can do that. I've read some things about like, if you're practicing a skill that you would not do in this country in another country, you are not qualified to do it. For example, if you would not build a school in Canada, if you do not have the skills to go to a construction site and build a school in Canada, do not go abroad and build a school. So I know that there are websites you can go to, people that are far more educated than me, that could like help you figure out if what you're doing is more harmful or helpful than myself. You can like Google it and you'll find something that will be like a good guide, I think.
But this is another side that I want to bring into this, okay? We have Ben who said #MySide. You shouldn't be volunteering in different countries just to get likes on your social media. Volunteer because you want to. But what I'm thinking is, when these people go and volunteer, and even though you might say that, yeah, okay, there's this evidence which shows that can be harmful over there, I always wonder if that exposure gets out enough, especially if it's some bigger person, does that not inspire more people to consider in the political discourse and maybe try to benefit the reconstructive aid that might be sent over there to help them out at the voting booth?
But this video that was like, my understanding was like made from like a research group, or I'm not totally sure, but the video that was made sort of talked about how actually like those selfies perpetuate, it's like a type of poverty porn, right? Like it actually perpetuates a lot of stereotypes, and like it's not like reaching what it needs to.
Yeah,
I want to be clear though, I think it's well intentioned. I do not think the people that are going abroad, which gives me hope that people will make changes.
For sure, but I think here's the thing. But I feel like 9 times out of 10, people only give back to feel good about themselves anyways. So like if you're gonna tell somebody about the good things that you did, what's the difference between that and posting a selfie online telling you people you did the same thing? Because 9 times out of 10, it's just to put in your ego and just to fill up your ego and say I did something good. So regardless of like whether you put it online, it's just like versus not putting it online, it's all just boosting your ego in anyway. So you might as well just like. It doesn't matter if you post it online or not.
That makes me feel really, but that makes me feel really sad.
But let's be honest.
No, I don't think that, I really don't think that's on. I know so many amazing people that do really thoughtful, impactful volunteer work in their own communities that do it out of a place of true love and compassion. It would break my heart if I genuinely believe people were giving up.
Wait, because I know you're a huge fan of Oprah, and Oprah often says that selflessness is selfish. She does it because she loves to do it. Is that not?
Let's take this one to Twitter.
As someone who's volunteered abroad, I actually think most trips are problematic unless you are doing things that will change the community after you've left, such as building literacy programs and providing jobs for individuals. If you're doing something like feeding a community, taking photos, playing games, the community is going to be the exact same way as the way you found them after you've left.
Adulting to me means when you are forced to handle adult situations. And I'm 47, and I think I'm just now getting ready to start handling adult situations. My mother actually never gave me any real good advice. She's not much of an advice lady. So I tend to do the opposite of whatever my mother suggests because that seems to have worked out well for me. If I could tell my teenage self one thing, I would have said, check your diet and don't stop working out.
Do you judge women who get married, then change their last names? The heterosexual marriage tradition of a woman taking her partner's last name has implications for men and women. Women who choose not to take their husband's name are seen as being ambitious and assertive. And new research out of the University of Nevada shows that men whose wives don't take their name are seen as less powerful and less masculine. Those in favor of a name change often say it's symbolic of a new partnership. But those against say it comes down to gender equality. If men aren't changing their names, why should women? What do you think? When you marry someone, should you share the same last name?
I am actually really against changing your last name when you get married. And there's a couple reasons why. I think one, especially when it comes to me personally, like I want to pursue an education and I'm not going to be like Layla, someone else's name, all my letters because they didn't earn that, I earned that, so it's gonna be Layla Hobbs on my degree. And second, I don't wanna be recognized as anyone's property. Like, I gave my cat my last name. Like, my cat is not property, but like I kind of do own my cat. I did buy him, so like I wouldn't wanna take someone's last name, and I wouldn't want my partner to take my last name either. I feel like we're our own people in our own rights, and we don't need to share names to change that. Maybe if you do like a cool like mashup and you get some really awful name, I think, okay, maybe you could do that. But I don't think we can share names and give each other's names without being possessive.
But do you think it's wrong for a woman to want to have her husband's last name?
I'm not gonna get involved in people's personal decisions, but I personally think that it is a little bit of a possessive type of thing where you are kind of implying that you are possessing someone else's
I don't
life.
think so at all. To be honest, I feel like there's nothing wrong. Like, it doesn't make a woman less powerful if she chooses herself to have her husband's last name. Like, for me, if my future wife, or if we had the conversation and she wanted me to take her last name, and I'd be okay with that, because 9 times out of 10, my last name was given to me by my colonizers, so this is not even my last name to begin with, so who cares? And for her, if she wanted to take my last name, I'm fine with that. If she wants to keep both last names, let's do that. It's something that you have to agree upon together, and it doesn't make you less of a person or more of a person if you take your partner's last name or not.
Are you pro-hyphen?
Me?
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, I don't feel attached to my last name either. I know you're very anti-hyphen. So I will say, sure, I'm pro-hyphen. Sure.
Here's my issue, okay? Last names are inherently patriarchal. They're coming from men anyways. What's the difference between taking the name or not? 50% of people are going to be male, 50% are going to be female, if you believe in the gender binary, of course. I'm just using this in the context of, in marriage, if you're going to have this last name, the most important part is the child should have the male's last name, because otherwise you're just letting some other man have some more power, and you know I'm right.
Okay, here, no,
Okay.
I know you're not right. Here are my things. Okay, one, this is like a very heteronormative conversation, but I will say just within the topic of just taking a partner's last name, I have always said I will only take a partner's last name if I think it's cool. Like, it's just based on quality.
But the kids,
if they have
what about the children?
kids too. I want my kids to have the dopest last name. My friend's last name is Love, and her father has a doctorate, so his name is Dr. Love. You tell me, you fall in love with the love of your life, and they have a cool last name like that, you're taking it.
Hashtag my side. I think that's fine to change your last name when you get married, but I think that would be better to keep your last name or put your 2 last names together. Don't agree with that at all. So you can have a bit of both of you. Your name isn't even yours that much. It came back from so many generations.
I don't feel attached to my last name.
Like, personally for me, last name, like, my life has gone through a lot. My dad was adopted. Like, there's several, like, 8 or 9 last names I could have gotten, and I got the one that I got for a reason, so I'm gonna hold on to that.
I think that if you hyphenate your name, you take the other person's name, that's totally fine, and no one should ever judge you or say, you know, you're being objectified for doing that. It's your decision.
My side on this is very, very simple. It is do whatever the heck you want to do. Do whatever is right for you and your partner. I think it's a case-by-case basis.
When it comes to work, do you plan on following in your parents' footsteps? A New York Times analysis found that parents influence their children's career choices. Sons of working fathers are about 2.7 times as likely as the rest of the population to have the same job. Daughters of working mothers are about 1.8 times as likely to have the same job. And kids of parents who are unemployed are more likely to express career uncertainty. Researchers say this has to do with parents offering their kids workplace connections and what they call the breakfast table effect. Kids are influenced by the conversations they hear at home. Do you plan on pursuing the same job as your parents? How much do your parents' career choices impact your own?
I would not plan on pursuing my parents' career choice just because it's not me. And just because, like, growing up, I never really knew what they did, but I knew that they worked hard. I knew that they had a great work ethic, and that's something that influenced me in my life. I do think that parents do have a big influence on their children's lives, not even just in their careers, but just as who they become as people. And I think that can be a good thing, but also a really bad thing.
You know, Devlin tells us, I do think parents have lots of influence of their kids, but the kids may not even like the job. The lie is when you pressure them. Were you ever pressured by your parents?
Okay, here's the thing. I never felt pressured and uncomfortable, but I did actually end up in the exact same field as my dad. I'm studying nuclear engineering, and my dad is literally in the nuclear waste cleanup field. And I think what happened to me is when I was younger, my dad took me to work a lot, and I always got to be around science, and inherently came to love science, pursued a science degree, and then switched my science degree to another science degree, which just so happened to be what my dad did. So I think my parents did influence me significantly, but do I feel like I don't love nuclear engineering? No, I really do love it. So in my case, it turned out really well, the influence that my parents had in terms of my career.
Yeah.
I don't know, Gracie, what about you? What do your parents do? Are you like pursuing that?
So when I was really young, my mom's a lactation consultant. So when I was like really young, she like helps people with breastfeeding. Okay. So when I was very young, when I was like 7 years old, and I thought I would be like with my dolls, and I'd be like, are they pumping or hand expressing? This is important. Like when I was younger, I thought that this was like, but then I grew, now I'm not really following my parents, but like my parents' careers. But I think that I can understand you be influenced by your parents, but I also think that it's really important that if your parents do influence your career, they can influence your passion, expose you to something you maybe wouldn't be. But I'm very anti-nepotism. I'm very anti maybe like family connections. Like I would hope that, I mean, I know you would use Family Connect. I know you would, because who doesn't? But that makes me, that's
It's not only you would, it's also think about like if I had kids and I was successful in a field, and I want to make sure that my kids, just had a safe, secure future, I'd feel like I'd not even be a good parent if I did it. Because if I know all the other adults are doing it, would you be a bad parent if you didn't try to use this nepotism in their favor?
Parents try so hard to make their kids going into their field because that's what they know best. But that might not always be right for that kid. That kid might want to be creative, or that kid want to be in the work field, and that could be something that's completely opposite to them, and they always feel like, oh no, you can't do that because that's not safe, because that's not what I did. Yeah. And I think that's where it can get so toxic.
You know what, I think there's also really another influence. My mom is not a science major. My mom is a very, very businesswoman, and she used to take me to work as well, and one of the things that she influenced me on is that I definitely did not want to be a business person. So I think like that's an interesting way to influence the career choice, because I went there and I was like, yeah, this is definitely not something I wanted to do, and my mom was cool with that, but she exposed me to the world.
I think a more impactful conversation to have over dinner is to ask your kid and talk about what makes them passionate. Because then, even from an early age, you're teaching them to be independent in the world and teaching them to find a career that actually makes them feel happy and fulfilled.
Guys, we have a guest! We have Wali Shah coming on with us.
All right. It's your boy coming through on the set for Sides. You guys good?
What's up? How are you doing, people?
Welcome to the show.
All right. Thank you for having me.
No problem. Thank you.
Like,
we were just talking about parents influencing their child's careers. I don't know if you were listening to that, but given the influence, I want to ask you, did your parents influence your career? Are they still influencing your career?
See, man, my parents came from Pakistan to Canada when I was like 3 years old, so they basically sat me down the second the plane landed, and they're like, yo, you gotta be a lawyer, doctor, engineer. So I had this crazy amount of pressure from my parents. They wanted me to pursue those careers because those careers have social prestige and they have a lot of money associated to them. I never wanted to do any of that. I wanted to be a musician. I wanted to be a poet. That was always what I wanted to do, and I had to really fight for that in my household. And I'm glad I did, because here I am now on Sides doing my thing. So.
You're here on Sides right now, but a little bit back, you freestyled with the king, Kung Fu Kenny, Kendrick Lamar. We're gonna show a clip, and you have to tell us all about it.
Absolutely.
Okay.
But now I'm going far, put the gas in my car, passed off the mic to Kendrick Lamar.
Growing up, living with these teens, every day we contemplate no dreams. We write down more types of schemes, but we bigger than that, we going with the themes. The riz, the past and the journey.
Oh my God.
Yo, damn with the periods, like.
That was probably one of the biggest highlights of my life. And at a time, too, where I was really struggling with self-doubt and thinking, man, I really don't know if I'm gonna make it in this. It's so tough being an artist. And just getting a chance to do that with Kendrick Lamar, like, not only was it super dope to like tell my friends, but it was validation. Like, yo, you fought for this, and this is the result. This is the fruits of your labor. And for me, that was really a big point in terms of pushing me further and saying, I have to pursue this now. If I can get here, there's no way I can't go farther. So that was really what it was about.
What brought you into poetry, and to see how far you've come and how far you've grown? What brought you to that place now?
Well, one first person that I have to really mention is my high school teacher, Miss Riley. She was dope. She had like Timberland boots back in grade, back in grade 10, and she had a haircut that made her look like Rihanna. And I really loved her vibe, because she wouldn't be about just, teaching Shakespeare. She'd be about like, yo, you guys know what Tupac is? And be like, yo, Tupac's a gangster rapper. She'd be like, no, he's a poet, And she gave me this book in grade 10, and it was called The Rose That Grew from Concrete. This is the book of Tupac's poetry. And I never knew Pac did poetry. And when I had this, I was like, yo, this is dope. Mans have to try it, you know? So after I just started writing my own poetry, and I said, you know, this is how I'm gonna share my story, because poetry is such a powerful tool. And that's where it happened.
Coming from Pakistan, like what is your experience?
We live in Mississauga, shout out Sauga City. My mom was walking down the street, it was like Christmas time 2 years ago, and some dude in a pickup like literally just pulled up and threw coffee and garbage on my mom. And it was, not only was it just so disheartening, because like Mississauga is such a, you know, culturally diverse community, it's just that like, this is my mom, and like, it just made me so upset. But I think being Pakistani is something I have to be proud of, and I want to be proud of, and I want everyone to be proud of wherever they come from. That's your roots, that's your heritage. My kids are gonna know about, you know, butter chicken and naan and roti, you know? And if I don't take pride in that, then my kids won't take pride in that. And I want to be serious about who I am, you know? And that's what I do when I get up on the stage and I share my story and my poetry. I'm just opening up my wounds and my scars. And I think the fact that, you know, all this happened is just another reason for me to keep writing and keep sharing these stories, you know? And yeah, America's got it bad, but it doesn't mean there isn't a problem in Canada.
Do you have hope, though, that it can change and that we can live in a peaceful society?
Well, even the fact that me and you are on the show right now is giving hope, you know? The fact that there are two Muslim people, like, you know, doing this.
We're repping it out here,
exactly.
right?
I mean, it's not only is it cool for other young Muslims to see, but it just sort of breaks the stereotype that just because you're Muslim doesn't mean you're a terrorist, whatever. You could be a Muslim and you could be dope and, like, you know, be a talk show host or whatever, you know, or be like a poet, you know? So I really want to break that stereotype, and I do feel like I'm a very liberal Muslim, and you know, the things that maybe I talk about and I address a lot of other people won't, or maybe they feel a little iffy about it, like I got tattoos and all that stuff, but I feel like I have to just be my authentic self, you know what I mean? And yeah, there are even problems, you know, with people perceiving Muslims and all that, but there's even problems in the Muslim community. There's like an Arab superiority complex, you know? People think because they're Arab, they're better Muslims. Like, no, like, so not only is it a problem we need to address in terms of people addressing a Muslim certain way, but even the way Muslims address each other. So it's very multifaceted, you know?
Talk about like changing the way that Muslims address each other, and one big aspect of that is you calling yourself a self-proclaimed feminist. Now, how would you respond to people that say that feminism is like intrinsically just for women, or that's like an anti-male, super sexist ideology?
See, you know, there are really negative and I think unfair stereotypes associated to the word feminism, which is, I don't think it's fair to really have that. When I look at feminism, I look at it really as being an ally as a man, you know, and understanding and deconstructing my male privilege, because there is a patriarchal society that I live in that gives me privilege over women. So really just stepping back and think about things like sexual assault, you know, like men don't know how to talk about consent. Fathers don't know how to have the conversation with kids. You know, we have to really look back and say, like, how do I really deconstruct this mask of masculinity and like really understand what it truly means to be a man? Because being a man means asking for consent. Being a man means respecting a woman and not using stupid words to talk to any woman, you know? Respecting your mom, like this, oh man, it gets me so cheesed, you know? But I just feel like if I can be, you know, really honest for a second, if I like, you know, perform at a school or whatever, this is like the main topic I'd like to talk about, because there's so many young men listening to like mumble rap right now thinking they gotta be 21 Savage, you know? So that's not the kind of stereotype I want young men looking up to in terms of, you know, who they think they have to be. It's not about being cool, it's about doing the right thing, you know?
We're gonna play a really awesome game called Onside Offside. So we're gonna get these really cool thumbs.
Okay.
And so the way the game is gonna go is Gracie and Michael are gonna ask us questions.
Okay.
And if we're about it, we're thumbs up. If we're not, thumbs down. And this edition is all about food, because the two of us are in love with food. So let's get it.
All right, let's do it.
Okay, so couples at restaurants who sit on the same side of an otherwise empty booth.
Oh, okay.
3, 2, 1.
Are you like that too? So
I literally, with my man,
oh man, every time I go with my girl, it's like we gotta sit together and be cutesy and like feed each other.
I gotta like arm around me, we gotta cuddle.
Trust me, it's because I'm a keeper. That's why I like it.
I'm with you, 100%.
All right, onside or offside? Menus that have calorie information on them. 3, 2, 1. Okay.
I'm actually pro this.
I feel like we're the same person.
We actually might actually be the same person, but I don't know. I feel like it's good to know like nutritionally what's going in. And instead of calories, I'd rather like a product list of what's actually in there. But I also think you can like break down what the food is made of based on the calories.
Gracie, let's find something we'll disagree on. Come on.
I don't know if this isn't even controversial.
taking a photo of your food before eating it. 3, 2, 1.
Oh, no. Okay, let me start this.
Okay.
So my girl does this all the time. She spends like half an hour looking at the food, and I'm like done by the time she starts, you know? So you gotta stop doing that. It's not always about the gram. Like, you gotta just get in there.
Think about those videos where the person smashes it right before they take an Instagram.
Oh, I would love to do that. Yeah, like eat your food. Yeah.
Well, I gotta thank you, Wally, so much for coming on and having a really honest conversation with us.
It's my pleasure.
It's been really fun, and I really enjoyed that onside, offside, so thank you so much.
Thank you.
So, how are you doing, Teddy number 1?
Good, Teddy 2?
That,
I'm not Teddy number 1, you're Teddy number 1. Great name, by the way.
oh, absolutely. I would have picked it myself if I had the choice.
Are you an Edward or a Theodore?
Ooh, I'm a Theodros. It's Greek.
Whoa, awesome!
There you go.
Even better.
What are you?
Edward.
Edward, oh.
Royal.
So Tedward, really.
You can call me Tedward, Teddy.
Number 1, you are a big fan of sci-fi, and I'm pretty sure we're living in a dystopian novel. How do you think this will all end?
Oh my goodness. I hope it'll end well because a lot of the sci-fi I like is actually very optimistic. Like I'm a big fan of the Star Trek canon and I like optimistic sci-fi, so you know, a big part of me wants to believe that it's going to be a Gene Roddenberry-esque future, but I don't know. Right now, as you say, sometimes when you look at the current state of the world and politics to the South especially, it's a little bit disheartening. So I hope we're not headed to a Cormac McCarthy's The Road scenario.
Nah, I'm seeing more of a Soylent Green situation.
Soylent Green?
Yeah,
oh no!
Overpopulation, there's too many people. We need to cut them right down. I actually used to work in politics, so what is something...
I did!
What is something you'd like to speak out about right now?
Did you read my wiki?
Oh, absolutely.
I worked in Canadian politics, but then in university I studied American government. And actually, the older I've gotten, the more I'm kind of focused on international affairs. So when I think about politics now, it tends to be international and what's going on in other countries and other parts of the world.
So if you could go back to your younger self back then, would you tell him to do anything a little differently, or?
I'd probably tell him, honestly, not to worry so much. I think, and you're probably in this spot right now, as are most of your viewers, where it's very easy to get hung up on what am I going to be, what am I going to do, what's my destiny, what's my fate. And unfortunately, you do have to make some decisions in terms of schooling and your career trajectory early, but it's very easy to get really worked up about that. But the reality is, a lot of people that I know who are in their 30s, 40s, even their early 50s, still would say they really don't know what they want to do when they grow up, right? And a lot of your work life will be accidental. The paths that you go down will be accidental. So if I was going to give advice to my younger self, it would be just maybe not to worry so much about charting a course of exactly where I'm going to be 10 or 15 years later. It's tough to follow that advice, though, when you're in your shoes, right? Because you want to know where the path is going to go. But it would probably just be to not worry so much.
It's been very lovely speaking to you, Teddy.
Thanks, Teddy. Bring it in. Bring it in.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Teddy number 1.
Teddy number 1 as well, because we're all pretty great Teddys, am I right?
We're all right. We're doing okay. You're doing very well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okie dokes.
So I want to talk a little bit more about the voluntourism topic because I was really surprised at all of you, and Christian actually tweeted in tonight and he said, voluntourism is often harm masquerading as help. Far too many NGOs take away local jobs by having volunteers do them. Furthermore, I know nothing about carpentry. If I built a house, it would be unsafe. Charity work is honorable, but you need to make sure that it really is help. Why are you guys so for this? Because Gracie's the only one that agrees with Christian. Michael or Leila?
Michael, do you want to move on?
Go ahead.
Okay,
I'll just go. I'm not for this. I am not for this. I was just trying to see the positive light that you can look in it but I think Gracie covered it the best. People are well-intentioned. It's just about trying to do things which do the best for these communities, and maybe. But
I think people are really uneducated about what this actually does.
I don't know. I think like if we're talking about on the pure practicality of like building things and like are you like scheduled or like do you have enough skill to do that? I think that the types of like construction that they're doing overseas is much different than the types of construction that they're doing in Canada. I guess Canada gets cold, you get permafrost. The way our walls are shaped are differently. A lot of the times over there you're using like concrete materials, which are a little bit easier to work with. So I think that with a little bit of education, you can actually build a decent house. Not that I'm
okay, interesting. Okay, that's a positive take on it. So let's talk about the parents and jobs. This one came in from Allie, and she said if a kid's parent comes home complaining about work, it's going to drive the kid away from working there because they'll think it's a bad place to be. Do you guys have a negative experience of seeing your parents like, I hate my job, in what they said? Teddy?
My father, he really wanted me to go into sciences, and I would have loved to too, but he complained about his master's degree so much. He complained
Just that it was hard?
He just complained about graduate school like hell, and whenever I talked about like being worried about failing a test, he'd be like, oh, Teddy, back in my class, half of my friends didn't graduate and like didn't
So he just made it sound scary, you didn't want to do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, interesting. Let's talk about the changing the last name. So this came in from Carrie. She said, I've been married for almost 15 years and I've never regretted keeping my name. I have 2 boys and they've never questioned it. So she thinks it's totally fine for her to keep her name. You guys are kind of mixed. I didn't keep my last name. I changed it, but I didn't have any attachment to my last name because I didn't have any attachment to my father. What do you think about this?
I just think people need to do what works for them.
Yeah.
I really do believe that. I think do what works for you.
And it's different for everyone?
I do think it is different for everyone. I would never do what works for you. I think it's really complicated with children. My immediate reaction is that children should maybe, it's such a specific
Maybe can
dynamic.
children choose?
Maybe. I don't know, it's complicated. My only thing is I think of like single moms a lot where their kids are stuck with some like random dude's last name that they met at like a nightclub or something. That I'm like, that's
what happened to me basically. Thanks guys. Have a good one.
Here's what I didn't get to say on sides. In my opinion, the royal family's supposed to be a figurehead which represents what's good. They're supposed to be those charitable people who go around and inspire us to do better, but they're also supposed to bring us together, you know. They represent the Commonwealth, the grandiose power which came over here and brought us all together to make this nation. As the child of immigrants, I'm happy to have been able to swear fealty to this power. You know, I reaffirmed my oath to the Queen when I went to Ottawa and did my citizenship oath again. And again, it's just this connection I have to something that I see as a positive tradition. However, I think if you are an Indigenous person in Canada, and obviously the crown represents something completely different, something that oppressed you, something that took away your land, and has still not completely been able to make, you know, come back and reconciliate with all the bad that they've done, I think it's totally fine if you are someone who wants to reject this, and I think it should be your right, your prerogative, and I would support that in every way. And that's my side. It looks good to us, but like other people can't see.
Maybe the other way? Yeah.
Ah.